You guys are recording?
Okay, thank you very much for coming today. I will first introduce myself. I am Rodrigo Bodasha. My name is already written there. You can just call me Rodrigo anytime. And I'm the mediator that was appointed by the center to help you to arrive to an agreement. I would like you first to know if you're comfortable here in the meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. You are you okay?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
And would like you to introduce yourself. I already have some chat with you priorly by telephone to kind of pre-mediation. So I can identify by your voices, but I would like you to introduce yourself.
So my name is Bob Cooper, and I'm the union rep for Big Buses, and I also work for the company.
Thank you, Bob. And
my name's Chris. I'm the HR manager of Big Buses, and I'm in charge of the rosters.
perfect. So to be clear, this is a voluntary process, and the idea of the process is that you feel very comfortable with it. So one of the first things I would like to acknowledge is that, or to know, is that you can call me Rodrigo. Do you mind if I call you by your first name, like Bob and Chris? It's okay for you?
That's fine, yeah.
That's great.
Thank you very much. I don't know, you have some prior experience with mediation? Do you know something about it?
No.
No.
Okay, thanks. So I will explain you a little bit more further how it goes. But as I told you before in the prior phone calls, I would like to know and to be sure that you would have some time constraint or not, because I asked you to set aside 2 hours for this process. Is it possible?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I've set aside 2 hours, Rodrigo.
Oh, thank you very much. Both very gentle. Do you have any authority to settle? I have to be clear about that, because both of you have, I would like to know if you already signed an agreement before entering to mediation.
I signed one, and I think I sent it out in the post, so you should get it. So
Okay.
You should have already received it.
It's a mediation of the confidentiality agreement.
That was the mediation agreement.
Okay, perfect. And do you?
Yes, that's the same.
Okay. And if I hope so, we arrive to an agreement, do you have the authority to settle? I have to arrange to be sure of that. Or you have to ask for someone else, legal advice or any other opinion or...
Well, I'll need to make a phone call to just get some further clarification from the union, but I can do that in a break call.
It's okay for you if even though we arrive to some general points of agreement, Bob can't call somebody else before we make a final agreement?
Yeah, I think that's fine for me. I need to double check with the company as well.
So, in the event we arrive to a principle of agreement, can we set a timeline of 24 hours to finalize this and sign it?
24 hours works for me.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Well done. Well, I asked you before if you knew something about you have an experience on the mediation, and this is a good and very efficient way of solving some disputes. And one of the main principles of mediation is that you arrive here voluntariness. That means that I have to be sure that you didn't arrive with a mandatory order, even though sometimes a court may, but in this case, as it's a voluntary process and you assign this center for the mediation, the complete process, it is voluntary. That means that, and I hope it wouldn't happen, and I regret if I felt I've been in that position. If you feel uncomfortable, you may say it on the table, and if you are looking for that nothing is going on, you can go. But if that happens or arises and make another feeling, I would appreciate if you told me before to look what we can do to feel yourself more comfortable in the process. That's lead us to a very important thing, that when you are seated here, you are seated in a good faith. That means that a climate of respect, an environment of respect shall be in this table. Not just towards me, but before yourselves. Because the mediation has a key point here that is very important. It's that would give you the opportunity here in this table, in this session, to express yourself, what you feel, what are your needs, but also to listen to each other. It's very important for this process that you be open to listen to the other party, to the other side. What are the feelings, their point of views? Because in this kind of dispute, it's very common that we arrive here with a very aggressive position at the beginning, and here is the moment to shake it off, to be smooth, to be clear, and that's it. For you to have the opportunity to express yourself, what you feel, but also to hear. I talked to you about confidentiality. You both signed, if I well understood, the mediation agreement. With the mediation agreement was the confidential agreement. That's another important thing that it is in this procedure. That all engaged in this procedure will remain and will be confidential, at least as the law allows. Because if there's some exception, that's not the case to see right now. But what you said here in the table, it would remain completely confidential. None of you, that means that none of you can go afterwards if it happens to you decide to go outside this table. Can use the information and telling you, for instance, Chris said in the mediation X, and you can say Bob said in the mediation Y. That's not possible because the whole process is confidential. Sometimes you may not feel so comfortable in the discussion because sometimes we don't hear something, or we want to keep something for us. You will both have the opportunity to have private session with the mediator, with me, an equal time, and to reassure you on the confidentiality issue. All what is said in those private sessions will be held in that private session. You are the only ones allowed to explore afterwards in the following step from those private sessions. What do you feel it is proper to talk about when we return from the session? The confidentiality agreement is not just for you; it is also engaging me as a mediator. So I cannot express myself anything about what I speak with you in the private session, either outside this mediation table. I cannot reveal nothing at all. Who the parties were, what things we had to talk about, everything have to keep completely confidential. So just to recheck, mediation agreement and confidential agreement are both signed?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't think we are right to that point, but just to remind you, the idea is to be very respectful to each other. Each of you will have the same time to express yourself, so let's try to avoid some disturbing the other party while they are speaking, because we are gonna have a chance to talk. And about my role, for you it's important to know that the mediator is not a judge, it's not an arbitrator. I'm not an adjudicator, so I won't decide nothing. You don't have to convince me who are right or who are wrong. This is not a question here in this table to discuss who was right or wrong. It's how we foresee your relationship in the future, and how can we mend eventually the disputes or the problems that brought you here. In that sense, I have to reassure you and warrant my impartiality. I have no bias for one part or another. I have to disclose everything that could affect my impartiality. And at the moment, most of my knowledge, I don't have nothing at all, neither to the parties, neither to the subject that is submitted here in the table that can affect my impartiality. So that's a warranty for you that I'll be equal for both. I think when you ask for the mediation, you received with the agreement and the mediation agreement and the confidential agreement a kind of highlights of the procedure that you have. I have print for you a kind of a diamond how the procedure goes. So I will explain you how it will go, because the process, one step to another. One stage will lead us to another. How are we going to deal with it? So, in this, you will have the opportunity, once I end this part of the introduction, to express yourself. You will have both equal time. In that point, I would like you to look forward what are your main issues that you want to solve here. What is your perspective to the main subject of the dispute have arise between you, and that's where the respect is the most important thing, because the idea is to explain me what happened in your opinion on the particular matter. This is not a court, so it's not intended that you contradict everything you say to another. It's just a stage in which you are able to express yourself freely. And in that point, I would like you to be, while one is speaking about this point, the other listen very clearly on what they are telling. And if you have any doubt, any correction, I would appreciate if you write it on the paper, on your notebooks, and then when you have the opportunity to talk, you can express it. Once we make these party statements, as Bob and Chris, you will explain me, I will make a resumming of what you have said, just to clarify if I well understood what are the main issues of your concerns. Then we will work together on setting what are the key points that we're going to discuss in this meeting. That's what we call the agenda. We highlight what points we revealed, like the common points of discussion. And in a common work, we're going to explore and define what is the problem. Just to clarify the stages between the agenda and exploring, defending the problem. Just in the agenda we'll put randomly some issues, but we are not making any qualifications or giving it some values, positive or negative. We are just going to put a title to the points, and then each of those points will be discussed and exploring, so we can open what else the issue will be. While you have other express and we have made this common work, it would be in this procedure necessary to ask for each of you the time to discuss in private. As I told you before, those private sessions are confidential. The other party won't be there, so you can speak freely whatever you didn't want to express, or to reaffirm certain points that you made in this agenda, in this agenda and the discussion. And as I asked for one to take the time in the private session, the other one will take the same time to discuss with me or present its concerns on the things that we have covered. That would lead us and would help us to, for you especially, to realize what are the main points of the discussion. How can we propose or create some options that afterwards, in the second big stage, I would say, we're going to discuss. What I mean an option is how do you foresee what you have heard to the body, and what would be the point for you that is a good point to present to the other, like an alternative to resolve this dispute? That leads to the fifth stage of our mediation process, that is in this common session, after our private session, we begin to present what you have thought during the private session and when you have the time to cool off, when one body was inside, and generate in a common sense what do you think could be the options. At that point, we don't evaluate the options, we just present it. Why? Because we will have the other stage, the fifth stage, in which we're going to evaluate what if it's good, what if it's bad, why is good, why is bad. That's very important for you to be and to have the opportunity, the chance to clarify why it is a good or not option for you. And finally, and I hope so, we arrive to that point, when we reach some common points that you agree, we can finalize with an agreement and close the mediation process. That would take more or less the 2 hours that we set during the process. Is any doubt that you have on the process?
No, that's pretty clear.
Do you have any concern at all to the process?
No concerns.
Thank you. Would you like to proceed?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. In this part of our meeting, I would like to ask, is any of you interested in begin, or?
Yeah, I don't mind. I'd like to begin.
I think it's more appropriate for Bob to begin.
Okay, great. So if you understood, you are alright that Bob can tell us what's in their position right now.
So I'm very concerned that Peter is being given more weekend work and more public holiday work than the other drivers. Chris is in charge of the rosters, and I think Peter's being favoured because he was an experienced coach driver, and you know, the work needs to be shared equally amongst all the drivers, but I think it's unfair that Peter's getting weekend shifts that are a lot more, given you know, he only commenced driving 10 months ago, and that's unfair. You know, there's a lot of other senior drivers in the company that need weekend work and penalty rates and need to work on the public holidays. And Peter, you know, he gave up his driving role. You know, he's been a manager, and now he's come back. He's driving for 10 months. Only 10 months he's driving, and he's gone back in the roster. He's right at the top of the roster, and he's getting all these shifts. You know, he's earning a lot more money, and that's unfair. It's unfair for me as the union rep. It's unfair for all the other drivers. If this is going to continue, I'm going to, and it can't be fixed, I'm going to threaten industrial action. I'm going to threaten a strike. I'm going to get the drivers. I'm going to go to Fair Work, and I'm going to, this is going to be very disruptive for the company, because it sends a bad message in terms of equity in the workplace, and to a large extent I think it's Chris's fault. Chris is in charge of the rosters, and there's been no transparency around why Peter is given more weekend work, and it's unfair, and I'd like it resolved.
Thank you all. Is there anything, something else that you want? I forgot to, before we leave Chris the opportunity to express himself, I forgot to tell you that if you need refreshments and coffees and everything, they are just outside. You can tell us to make a timeout when the discussion. And would you like some water?
Yes, please.
Sorry about that. Very unpolite from my part.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Well, Chris, what do you think about what Bob has expressed?
Yeah, so I've had the opportunity to talk to Bob a few times in person and on the phone about this issue. And it's been unfortunate that he hasn't been able to understand the situation from my perspective. I've spoken to him about this many times, that for me as the roster manager, I make every effort to give everyone their fair share of weekend and holiday work, and that there is definitely no preference for any one driver. And it's unfortunate that he's now accusing me of favouring one driver over another, when in fact that's not the case, and that's never been the case, and that never will be the case. I think Bob's intentions of bringing this issue to Fair Work and to threaten with industrial action is going to be detrimental to both parties. For him as a member of the company and as a driver of the company, and for the rest of the company as well, and which is something that he's clearly aware of. And I think the important thing that I've been trying to stress to Bob as he's made his complaints is that in the course of managing the rosters at work, there are a lot of concerns, and there are a lot of demands that I have to take into account when I make those rosters, and that may have been affecting the apportionment of work for certain drivers and others. But the reason for Bob's purported allegation that Peter is receiving more holiday work, more penalty work than others, is unfounded. And for me, when I create rosters, it really comes down to the availability of individual drivers. There are certain drivers that have been very particular about not taking up any weekend and holiday commitments because of their own personal commitments. And the way that I apportion the weekend work is simply by going down the list of all drivers and seeing who is available on certain days, taking into account that most of the drivers have weekly work scheduled, and that they do need to have adequate rest between their weekend work and their weekday work. And so with that in mind, I just think Bob, as much as I understand where Bob's coming from, I think his attitude has been a little extreme, and his intentions of bringing the issue to Fair Work and to threaten with industrial action is I think just far-fetched.
Thank you, Chris. Do you have something to add? Or
I think that's all for now. Yeah.
well, at this point, I will make summarizing the ideas to know if I well understood what are the points of the problem. So I would appreciate if you make some points if I made a mistake, but I will make the summarizing the same order that you have expressed yourself. Bob, you are very concerned at this point. You have said that you are very concerned that Peter, that is in particular a driver on the list of drivers of big buses, has been given more work than the other drivers. And you said, I heard you said that Chris made the rosters, and he is responsible for giving Peter these particular shifts. I heard you say also that it's unfair that Peter had more shifts than the other drivers, in which you add to that statement that there are more experienced drivers that need the shifts and they're not considered on the rosters for the weekends and holidays. And I heard you say that Peter is earning more money than the others, and that's unfair. Than the position he is right now, that so in your opinion, I said you were in your opinion, that it is because Peter has been a manager and now he come back for driving, and that it could be a reason that's why he's been favorized by in this case Chris, as he's the manager. The roster, sorry, and it is, and you said here that if this problem is not resolved, you will call for a strike as your current position as the union manager. And I heard you say, I think that there's no transparency on how the shifts are organized. Am I correct?
That's right, yes.
Did I miss something that you would like to add on those summarizing?
And just that Peter's come back to drive after 10 months.
How? I mean,
Well, you know, he's only come back and he's driving now for the last 10 months.
mm-hmm. You're concerned on that point, was it?
Sorry?
You're concerned at that point? Was it?
Yeah.
Is it what? Why he's coming back?
Well, he has come back to drive. So he was a manager, and now he's driving, and he's only been driving for the last 10 months, but he's getting more work.
Okay.
Well, why would that be a concern for you?
I will be, if I mind you just for a second, I would like to summarize, and then we can go back to our process. You will all have the chance to express yourself and to discuss those points and ask questions to the others. But at this point, I would like to let the opportunity to Chris to summarize, to hear what I have understood of what you have said. Well, Chris, you said at the beginning of your statements that you had the opportunity to talk with Bob by phone in person, but I heard you say that it's sad that Bob doesn't understand the real reasons on what's happening on the rosters of the buses. And you are a driver too, and I heard you say you make the rosters too.
I'm not a driver. I'm the HR manager at the company.
Oh, sorry, I heard you say that you're a driver.
No. Okay. I don't have a driving role. My role is at the human resources department of the company, and I'm in charge of drawing up the roster.
I appreciate your correction. Well, I heard you say too that it's not the case that you are favoring a particular a driver to another. In this case, it should be Peter. And you think that to lead a strike at this point will be bad for the company. And your role and your position as a human resources manager and in charge of the rosters, you express that you have a lot of demands of some of the drivers, and you have to attend all those demands of the drivers while you're doing and organizing the rosters.
Yes.
Thank you. So I heard you say that you found that what Bob has said, it is unfounded, because it's invalid at all, that kind of allegation. Because in particular, some drivers have expressly asked to you to not be included in the roster for the weekends and the holidays, and so the process as it goes is that you have a list and you go down, correct me if I'm wrong, going down on the list and see who's available or not.
Yes.
Okay. So you end your statement telling that at this point Bob attitude is not, it's in some point extreme to thinking on making a strike. You reaffirm that statement that you first at the beginning.
Yes.
Was it right?
Yes.
Okay. So, is there any something that both of you would like to add? There's not a time yet, I want to remind that, to have some discussion and confrontation, just to be clear if I took all the points that you made on your statements.
Yeah, I'm clear about what I've said.
Okay, thank you. And Chris, it's
Yes.
okay? Okay. So, as we can see, both of you have declared some relevant points, and I would like to work with you on what are to identify the matter of discussions that we call the agenda. And I will begin for what I heard of you. I heard both of you telling that it's a point of discussion on how the shifts are done. All right, it's accurate.
Yes.
How the shift, yeah, so
How they are organized, what is the
shifts.
criteria? Yeah.
And is that specifically weekend shifts and public holiday shifts? Is that combined or separate?
We can took it like a
So shifts, yeah.
a shifts in general. It's okay for you?
Yes.
So, how? We'll make it general like the shifts, okay? We will make it very general so we can expand our discussion. Then, one thing that you have upheld, Bob, in this conversation was that if you don't feel like resolve this issue, you can call for a strike. On the other side, Chris, that it was kind of will be try to be very correct. It will be extreme to call for that strike. Can we put that subject in the agenda to the strike, like the ending point?
Yeah, I think so.
I will put it at the end, because the idea of that is never arriving to a confrontation scenario, but we'll leave here at the end. The idea is that we can evaluate what conditions should be fulfilled to not call a strike. Okay? I heard you to say that it related bullshit, it's transparency. Because there were some allegations on the table regarding that you don't know how the shifts are arranged, and right now some information has arisen on how the shifts are done. So maybe the communication between you, it's a good point to look for. As you said, you and you talk with Bob a lot of times or telephone person, but it seems he doesn't understood what your real intent, and you, as I heard you say, it was not very clear intention to hear you.
Mhm.
It's okay to put communication in general.
Yep.
Communication.
Can I just clarify something?
Yeah, please.
Just with shifts,
Mm-hmm.
is that going to include, because there's a difference between the shift when somebody does it and going on the roster of when they're available. So the roster is more about the availability. So
Mhm.
I just wanted to make sure that we're going to talk about, is it shifts?
Is it possible for you if we took together shifts and rosters?
I'm not sure I understand the
Okay.
issue.
So for me, the shift is, I work 6 till 6
Mm-hmm.
as the shift, the 12-hour shift.
Okay.
Whereas the roster is, I'm available this weekend. So I'm going on the roster for this weekend. So,
Well, I think for the purposes of me, when I'm drawing up the roster, both of those things are taken into consideration.
well, there's only shifts there, so I just want to make sure that.
We can make have a general discussion on shifts and rosters.
Yeah. Well, I mean the roster, the shifts are included into the roster.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. But in this statement would include both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why okay. Is there any other point of discussion that you could we can work on it? That's relevant for you to treat?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy with those.
Well, let's roll on it. What I want to do right now is to treat each of these points and see what are the particular matters that you want to treat in it. In this stage, the idea is that you don't try to convince me, because it's not my role. It's that you work together, telling to the other party what are your feelings about each of the subjects that we have identified, and try again to not interrupt the other party, because both of you will have the chance to discuss. In some points, maybe I would ask a little time to reframe or summarize what you have said, just to be clear that all of us understand the same thing and we could arrive to a common point. Okay? So, what do you think about we start with shifts and rosters?
Mm-hmm.
It's okay for you? Okay. So, sorry. We'll begin with the personal statement. Is it possible at this stage that we can begin with Chris explaining what are the concerns and feelings after that you have said to on the subject of shifts and rosters? Is it okay for you?
Yeah.
Well, Chris?
Well, he draws them up, so I'm keen to listen to.
I think we all drove
Yeah.
them up. So
So building on what I said earlier, the process that I go through for drawing up rosters is that there's a list, an alphabetical list of all the drivers. I go through each one of them. In terms of the weekend rosters,
I encourage you to speak directly about that. Would make very easy to all understand. This is the opportunity to be listened and to be heard, and also to express yourself. So don't lose this opportunity. It's a great opportunity that you cannot miss.
so the process starts with the booking. So we receive the booking from the tour. So we receive the work, and then we work out when the work is going to be scheduled for. And then I refer to the list of the drivers that we have for the company, and I go through systematically each name to work out which driver is available for that particular date. This applies regardless of whether it's a weekday work, or if it's a weekend work. I go through the list and I ring the drivers to check that they're available on the day of the scheduled work. If they're not available, then they're crossed out, and I work to the next name.
Let me interrupt you for a second, just to be clear on the procedure. So you have a list of all the drivers,
Yes.
on hand, and in the weekends and in the holidays you have some demand of work, special works, and once you have this this demand of work, special work, you take the list of workers or drivers, and then you see who's available.
Yes.
Going down on the list.
Yes.
Was that okay? Thank you. Just
And so once I ring the drivers and they've told me whether they're available or they're not available, then I'll continue to go down the list until all the positions that I needed to be filled have been filled. The list includes all the drivers except the ones that have told me explicitly that they do not want work for that particular day or for a particular period of time in their schedule. Drivers are free to take whatever days they want off, provided that they tell me beforehand, so that I can note that down on the list, and so then when I receive work, I know when to apportion the work to who.
And Bob, could you please explain? Sorry, Chris, could you explain, Bob, how do you make the list, and is there any particular order on the list? Would you please
Well,
explain?
the list is generated from the system in the computer, and the computer orders the list alphabetically, and that's always been the case, and so that's how I've been working down the list. But look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because when I've filled in all the positions for a particular job, and I move on to the next job, the next tool booking, I start from the next name down that I've worked on when I've finished the first list. So it's not the case that I'm always starting from the beginning from the top of the list and working down halfway until all the positions are filled. The fact is, I take the work and I apportion the work, and then I move on to the next schedule, to the next scheduled booking. And when I take the next scheduled booking, I work from the last name, or the next name down, that I have from the previous list. So in that sense, everyone on the list will receive, or will have the opportunity to receive the same amount of work. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't.
How do you feel about how the list was made, or the procedure? Did you know how it works before?
Well, we just see a list go up with the same names. We've never really understood it's, how if it's alphabetically, so it's always the same driver in the alphabet that's going to be given the first opportunity. If that driver's not available, then I'm assuming, Chris, what you're saying is you just go down the line. If that driver's not available, it then goes down the line. If that driver's not available, then goes down the line. And what you're saying is, once that job is filled, then the next job, you don't start at the top again, because those drivers have told you they're not available. I'm not
Yes.
sure why they're in the list. If they're not available, should it not be, guys, the list is alphabetical. I call Adam, Anthony Adam, because he's A, and every time I call Anthony Adam, because he's the first in the list, he's said for the last 5 times I've called him he's not available. Should he be in the list? We don't know how the lists are reviewed, and then the lists go up at the last minute. You know, I mean, these drivers rely on the weekend work. I mean, it brings in a lot of money for them when they're doing extra weekend work. I'm surprised that the company's just pressing a button, spitting out an alphabetical list, and if Adam and Anthony and Abraham and Bernadette are alphabetical, and for the last 3 calls they continue to say, Chris, I'm not available, guess what? We'll just keep calling you. I actually think that's not a...
I'm not sure you understood what I said.
Oh.
So I think that it's on the drivers that... Okay, the way it works is the drivers will tell me if they've got particular dates stricken out. So if they have family commitments or other commitments, they will tell me in advance.
And they're not in the list when they
and the list, their names, everyone's on the list.
Okay.
But the list will be marked next to their name. There will be a mark next to the name to say that they're not available for that day.
They tell you, but we don't know that. So maybe the list should indicate that they told you that, therefore...
Well, I'm not sure I understand this, because regardless of whether you know or you don't know, that doesn't affect the scheduling of the roster. I'm sure you'd like to. I'm sure that some of the other drivers would like to know how the process of rostering is done, and that's why I'm taking the effort to explain to you now how it's done. Because the premise of your allegation is that I am the process is not transparent, and that therefore I'm favouring. It gives me the opportunity to favour some drivers over the others, and I'm telling you now the case is that it's not the case. The process for rostering is systematic, and it's always been done the same way. And that when a new tour booking comes on, so like you said before, once I've finished filling in the positions for one tour booking, I'm halfway down the list. And when I go on to take on the next booking, I work from that name, from that part of the list downwards. So it's not the case that I'm starting from the top of the list at every booking. Because this is a job that I do. Rostering is a job that I do once a week. It's not a job that I do. We take in the work and then we accumulate all the scheduling until the end of the week, and then I spend every Friday to work out the rosters for the upcoming schedule in the next month or whatever the case may be.
So yeah, well understood, Bob. What you have said after we have listened, Chris, is that you have said some concerns about how the lists work, because you don't have all the information. Am I correct? That you make I heard you say like they do know how they make the list, but we, the workers, we don't know how it makes. And the main concern to you is that those shifts and how they are organized, it seems to mean a lot of money for the people that are working. So, and at this point, I guess I thought I heard you say that it's not that accurate how the list is made, that before all drivers ask you or notify you when they cannot do particular dates because they have some family subject issues, parties, whatever.
Yes.
And then you make, you exclude it from the list, not marking them. You just make a sign that they're not available on particular dates.
Yes.
So if I well understood, it's kind of
it's a
kind
mix.
of calendar.
It's a
make weekly.
I think what Bob needs to understand is that the process is a mix of.
Can I just ask Chris to speak to me?
Sorry.
Yeah, obviously.
Thank you.
Bob, the process is that you're concerned that I'm going down the list without remembering that certain drivers are already not available, that will only be the case if none of the drivers have told me beforehand that they're not going to be available on those dates. The reality is, maybe on one occasion, half the drivers would have told me before I get to the rostering that they're not going to be available for that weekend. And so I will have noted that down. But there are always going to be drivers who haven't told me beforehand and that I'll have to ring up for them to tell me that they're not available for that weekend. And that's how it's done.
And what do you feel? What do you think, Bob? It could be, in your opinion, a good way to solve this kind of making a calendar, as Chris said, and for you to be fulfilled this need of transparency, the way how they do the roster, how they manage the calendar of the weekly calendar. How do you feel about that? As
I'd like to work with Chris.
You sorry?
I'd like to work with Chris on.
Thank you. That's fine. How can you work with Chris?
Well, when he's drawing the rosters up, he could invite me in to look at, what he's doing.
If you're not rostered on a run, that is.
If I'm not rostered, yeah, I'm okay with that.
How do you visualize, Chris, this offer that Bob has expressed yourself?
Well, I think that's fine. I think as long as he's supportive and he doesn't disrupt my job of scheduling, I have no issue with it. I think I think it'll be better for him to see how the job is done, so that he's assured that it's transparent and that it's systematic.
Okay.
So, if I well understood, there's some common point at this level, not very detailed at this point, but there's an intention for both of you to work together and how you make the rosters and the shifts. Well, I'm okay. Do you mind if we pass to the next step in our agenda? That is the communication, because there's something there related on what you have told that could help us to advance in this point of the communication. You state something very important at that point, that it's they know how to do the things, the rosters, but you don't know as workers how they do. So we can define that point of departure of our discussion. So what do you think, or what do you expect that the communication should be in the company?
Well, the communication, I think, that is concerned for me, Chris, is Peter's very popular amongst the drivers. Peter was a manager, and in that management role, Peter would have